diligently they follow what this yoga sir tells.
Okay.
And
Okay.
we have it for the teachers as well. An
Interesting.
exclusive session on Saturday for teachers, and we also request any family member could join in on Saturday. It could be
Okay.
the parents, it could be the family of our teachers, and it is a wonderful session.
Oh,
And
wow.
it is not only yoga, it is sort of a discussion, so some parents can give in some points. So we have some parents who actually practice yoga in a
Yeah,
big
yeah,
way.
very hardcore
So
type.
it
Okay.
lands up into a good 10-15 minutes of interaction along with the yoga. So,
Okay.
and we all look forward to that Saturday. In fact, parents,
Okay.
teachers,
Very nice.
and I don't need to go and check the teacher's attendance on Saturday, which otherwise I will have to do. So
Okay,
that's actually doing good, and it's helping. It's helping.
okay. I think that's a very good question I'm now getting in a way, because I usually do not prepare for anything in terms of that this should be the format.
So
I
Gaurav,
would
we
love
also
to
do
hear.
manifestation.
Sorry.
We also do manifestation.
Okay, very nice.
Create
Fantastic.
elevated thoughts.
Okay.
With children online, otherwise in the classes, the teachers would. Like, I can do it, I've already achieved. I've accomplished my task because I'm focused on A, B, C, whatever.
Okay, okay. I would like to quickly welcome Dr. Samir. He is with us now as well, and very well done. Induji, Jayuji, and I think Ghamshyamji were the only one who took the challenge of coming on video. So I think thank you very much. But having said this, Dr. Samir, can I have you quickly on the screen so that we can say a quick hi? Then obviously I would, I am not sure if you are able to unmute yourself. You can, yeah, I think you are already the co-host now. However, we are unable to hear you. If you can possibly speak once, or maybe some issue at your end, you can resolve that. I'll just mute everyone for once, okay, so that you can then unmute yourself if time allows the question. Okay, Samir, where is Mr. Samir? Yeah, good evening, doctor. How are you?
Good evening. Good to see you all.
Likewise, thank you for your valuable time. And firstly, before I even go any further, my sincere thanks to you on behalf of the entire IPN family that you agreed to do this sort of a 6-day program for us. Thank you very much. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
And I wish you were with us a little earlier. Everyone was thanking that this was such a lovely exercise which we did with you. So thank you very much. And this is a voice, because I have curtailed the voice of my members because I muted them. So it is a very unanimous voice on behalf of everybody here. People will come along, Dr. Samir, as I said, we will kickstart this. So firstly, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, Dr. Samir Parekh is the director of Fortis National Mental Health Program. Now I would say, now I can say that he's a dear friend of mine because he very well look forward to joining us. This is, in fact, his second appearance at IPN. He was with us initially in May, if I'm not wrong, or April. And having said this, even then it was a pleasure, and today as well an equal pleasure. So thank you, Dr. Samir. Over to you. And as I said, he's a very, very good human being. That's the best introduction someone can give it to anyone. And obviously, he's a very distinguished leader from the medical field. Over to you, Dr. Samir. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I mean, to be honest, this wasn't a big ask for us because the fact that educational institutes, leaders want to spend their time prioritizing talking about mental health in itself is something that, one truly believes needs to happen a lot more.
Correct, sir.
So when I was contacted by Gaurav, I said, of course we do it. I mean, there is no other way to ensure that we keep the dialogue and conversations on mental health on. So most colleagues who talk to you over the days, we try to cover various topics. Today is World Mental Health Day, right? This year's theme is invest,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Invest has come in COVID times. But so my take on invest here is no, let's not talk about the money. Let's talk about the intent. Let's talk about how can we invest our time, our intent, our energies into mental health.
True.
You've had conversations on life skills. You've had conversations on school psych. You had conversations on art, teaching, emotional intelligence, performance. I'm going to briefly talk about a concept which I think as school leaders, you need to really consider picking up, which is mental health curriculum.
Mhm.
Mental health curriculum essentially is a concept wherein the school, during conversations for these many years that the child is with you, brings in certain aspects of mental health into children. Why do we need it? We need it because 75% of the people in the world, 75% of the people in the world don't want to take help or don't want to recognize mental health issues because of stigma. 800% shortage of experts in our country. I don't even subscribe to the thought that a counselor per school is going to have any solution. In any case, if you add up the counselors and add up all the schools, it's a mismatch in the first place. School is probably the only safe, closed environment that a child has during formative years for such a long time, which can actually ensure that in that environment we can do so much work with a child which could have a life-changing impact. We cannot be having a society where in years to come we'll have young people who by the time they're our age hesitant to talk about mental health. Because if you are not going to talk about mental health, it's just not going to work. So let me try and start talking about the entire concept of mental health. Let's look at certain facts first. Yeah. Why mental health in schools? 10 to 20% adolescents experience mental health condition. Now think about this. I'm talking about almost 1 in 5. Suicide is the third highest cause of death in the 15 to 19-year-old age group. Now you compare this to adult population, it is the 8th highest killer, third highest for this age group. And now this is even more important. By the age of 14, half of all mental illnesses have already begun, which means if we are aware at a school level, we would be able to diagnose 50% of all mental illnesses in years to come. And most mental health concerns continue to be undiagnosed, untreated. This is data from WHO 2018. What has happened to our life? Try and reflect on it. The modern day life has so many demands, daily hassles, pressures, vectors from so many directions. Family structures have changed. Grandparents aren't there. The support systems aren't there. If I look back at my school days and when I talk to my young colleagues, some of you've met in the last few days, when we had a school vacation or summer vacation, we virtually had no contact with our school friends left. All the contact was with the extended family, cousins, and neighborhood friends. So you essentially develop 3 kinds of support systems: cousins, neighborhood friends, school friends. All of that plays with the whole digital aspect has changed so much that so superficiality has taken over the true depth of relationships. And there is so much lack of communication, not just between the 2 generations, but more so between 3 generations. And there is a lot of dysfunctional relationships that young people see all around themselves. There's a rapid socio-cultural change happening, which requires a lot of adaptation. There is a lot of negative peer influence, whether the peer influence comes from on substance abuse, on aggression, on abusive language, pornography, so many aspects. There is an influence happening. There is rising aggression, rising violence across the world, and proliferation of unfiltered media and technology is something that we need to think about. In fact, one of the life skills that I think we all should work upon a lot is media literacy. Think about it, that a 12, 13-year-old child can watch every show that's been streaming on some of these news stream services. And you and I both know some of those shows are just not meant for children. How do you stop them from seeing it? So media literacy is the solution, if at all there was one. Now, 800% shortage of mental health experts in our country, 0.06% of India's health budget is spent on mental health. So what's the solution? The solution is you take a collective approach. You have a school counselor who has a limited role. You work with students a lot by empowering them. You work with parents by sensitizing them. You work with the teaching community by giving them the mental health skills. The school authorities value mental health and external experts as and when required, with media playing an important role. This is the circle of mental health for you. So why mental health? I will tell you what we've written is a curriculum. This curriculum has 5 modules. Module 1, mental health and mental illness, which helps you develop an understanding of what is mental health. More importantly, how do you identify mental illness? Second, destigmatizing mental illness, which is rethinking our social language. Third is encouraging and promoting help-seeking behavior. Fourth is building resilience. And fifth, establishing a culture of well-being in the classroom. These are 5 modules. We'll be happy to do a teacher training. I have talked to Gaurav about it, and we'll be happy to give the mental health curriculum training to the schools of the IPN network and train your teachers into the curriculum so that they can then utilize this curriculum and the knowledge of it to shape lives of children. Now, let's look at the first module. It talks about mental health and mental illness. So what is health? Ask yourself the question: physical, mental, social, emotional well-being, spiritual as well now. So if you look at it carefully, only one component of health is physical, rest is all mental. So all these preventive health checkups that we go through are essentially rubbish, because it doesn't even touch 3/4 of health, it touches 1/4 of health. So if we are looking at normal health, we need to look at health which has the mental component. In 2001, WHO talked about the state of well-being. What is mental health? A state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities. Now, look at these words very carefully. Well-being. So state of well-being, so that's a happy child. Individual realizes his or her own abilities. You want each child to recognize their strength, can cope with normal stresses of life, because all of us will have stress. So you have a child who has well-being, believes in one's own self, and understands and learns how to deal with stress, can work productively and fruitfully and contribute to community. Now that's mental health. Now what is school education? School education is you give children, strengthen their abilities, you help them deal with stresses of life, you make them productive, you create a well-being state, and you make sure that they contribute to the community. So essentially, school education is all about mental health. Now, mental health conditions or illnesses, one needs to understand this, because we tend to club everything in one. So mental distress, mental health problem, mental illness. What is mental distress? Response to everyday stressor, an exam's coming, I had a fight with a friend, I'm worried, I'm unhappy, no intervention required. Basic life skills are good enough, children learn to deal with the ups and downs of life, no intervention required. A mental health problem, which is a more ongoing stressor, like there is a problem in peer relationships, there is a physical illness, there is grief, anger, withdrawal, other issues happening. What do you need in this? Support from family, support from friends, guidance by counselors is good enough. Then comes the other extreme, which is mental illness, where you have a clear-cut diagnosable disease, which is where you should actually seek professional help. Now, before I tell you how to identify diseases, let's understand what brings a mental illness. Biopsychosocial, biogenetics, neurotransmitters, social are environment, psychological are self. So when these 3 together get mismatched, that's how a mental illness happens. That's where the treatment also happens for biological medications, for social friends and family support, for psychological cognitive behavioral therapy. In the mental health curriculum that I have written, essentially, we are talking about some illnesses, developmental disorders. So as teachers, we should be able to identify a child who's not developing in the right speed as per the age norms. That's a red flag. We need to figure it out and start early stimulation. Second is mood disorders. Depression is the single largest illness in the world. 300 million people globally suffer from depression, including children. So if you feel sadness, irritability, lack of moods happening, that's a red flag for you. Anxiety disorders, panicky, school withdrawals, not being able to take exams, not being able to speak in front of others, exam blackouts, these are all part of anxiety. Eating disorders, increasingly concern around eating disorders because of the nature of media that is there, which promotes a certain size, a certain height, certain weight, and things like that. Substance use disorders, big concern. I'm sure your heart bleeds like mine does every time you see a school-going student using any substance. You just feel, where did we all go wrong? Then trauma and related disorders in the modern day times, with the kind of problems that happen all around us. Trauma and related problem becomes an increasingly common concern. Obsessive compulsive disorders, which is a class of illness where reputation, perfectionism, cleanliness, hoarding, all these things come. Or psychotic illnesses, which are towards the more extreme behavioral change. So these are some of the disorders. Now, if you were to say, how would I know a mental illness is happening? So you look at emotion, which means moods are going up or down in a consistent manner. Thoughts, which means thinking is impaired. Behavior, which is either aggression, withdrawal. Social, which means changing the way relationship dynamics and dynamics are functioning. Self, which is how one feels about one's own self. And sleep-awake pattern, appetite and all. So when any couple of these aspects of our life, they start having a downhill, there is impairment of functioning happening, that is a mental illness. And this is what we need to keep getting our teachers trained and teachers in their conversation. There are modules for how teachers can train students into understanding this. So that was one module for you. Second module, destigmatization of mental illness, rethinking the social language. I was talking yesterday at the World Mental Health Federation, and I was speaking to young people across the world on the need of destigmatization. See, how does stigma happen? Starts with stereotyping, a person or thing that conforms to an unjust fixed impression, which is what you all know. How does it translate? All people with mental illness are dangerous. Let's say some people have this stereotype. So you are confirming to an impression or an attitude, stereotyping, which results into prejudice. I think people with mental illness are dangerous. So all people are dangerous stereotype becomes a prejudice, where without my knowledge, I'm agreeing to the stereotype, which results into discrimination, which means I don't want to be friends with them or be around them. This is social stigma, stereotype, prejudice, discrimination. When social stigma surrounds a person, most people end up internalizing that stigma, and then it becomes self-stigma. So I only feel stigmatized. I only feel it's my problem. So it's like blaming the victim. And how does impact of stigma happens? Individual self-blame, guilt, loneliness, hopelessness, shame, family, fear of isolation, lack of social acceptance, burnout, society, lack of opportunities. Study over 90,000 participants from across the globe found that stigma across the world is the top reason why people decided not to take any care. That's why all of us need to work upon it. How do we do this? We change the language we use. Oh, you are psycho. Oh, I'm schizo. Oh, that is OC. This needs to stop. Mental health literacy needs to be integral to our educational system. And portrayals in media needs to be self-governed. from comedy to violence to aggression to psychopathy. A lot of times, in the name of creative freedom, entertainment media has used mental illnesses, which has only increased the stereotype around it and increased the stigma. We can't control media, but we can be media literate. Let's ask ourselves a question: myth or fact? I'll share some common myths. In fact, today we did a whole day of debunking the common myths. We had asked people over the last few days on Twitter that what are your common myths, and we took a whole list. And if you, any of you who are on Twitter, go on, have a look at our Twitter feed, where we've talked about various myths, and we busted or debunked the myths. Mentally ill people are dangerous. False. Children cannot be diagnosed with mental illness. False. Children are behavior products of bad parenting or because of teenagers. False. Difficult temperament in school occurs because a child wants attention. False. Majority of mentally ill people need to be hospitalized during their illness. Absolutely false. Very, very rarely actually. Once a person has a mental illness, the person has a mental illness always. Not true at all. I can't do anything for someone with mental health needs. Not true. Actually, you can bring compassion, you can support, you can help in compliance of treatment, you can help create a social support system. I would not get mental illness because everything is fine in my family. Your stresses and your personality have nothing to do with mental illness. If it has to happen, it has to happen. And the fact that mental illness is because of a matter of choice or a weakness of character. It's like telling somebody that you had typhoid because of your own fault. So the next module is encouraging and promoting help seeking. I tell children that you do so much help seeking. So when you don't know an answer, you ask a friend. That's help seeking. When you're on the football field and you are near the goal post and you ask a friend to pass the ball so that you can score the goal, that's help seeking. When you copy the homework from somebody else, that's help seeking. So what stops you from help seeking when you actually need help? People believe that if you seek help, you are weak. People believe that you are exposing vulnerability. People believe that they are being judged. They sometimes feel they'll be treated badly. They worry about shame. They feel they might be embarrassed. There is a general negative attitude towards help seeking, that you are not confident, that's why you are needing it. And they also feel that it will be not confident. How do you promote help seeking? Recognize signs of help. Recognize and create awareness where children are able to seek help without being judged, and they have the confidence that they won't be judged. Provide information. So I'll give you an example. WHO gives this guideline that whenever a media house reports about suicide, they should also mention helplines and have a certain guideline. So if you use that, then you're automatically talking about help seeking while you are doing a certain reportage. Coming to the second last module, which is building resilience. What is resilience? The American Psychology Association in 2014 came up with a definition that resilience is a process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threat. So trauma, tragedy, adversity, threat is not in my control. Resilience is my ability to adapt to it. That's what is the key. So if I am given skills, I'm empowered, I know how to seek help, I know where to seek help from, I also build my own coping skills. That's how I build resilience. If I'm resilient, I'll be able to do well in my life. How do you build resilience? Teachers should share their own examples. We should share a lot many more examples. Like, for example, COVID is a very good time to actually talk about examples, the work done by frontline workers, work done by doctors, tremendous real life examples around us. You encourage people to build relationships. Evidence to suggest that people in good, strong, positive relationships are more resilient and have lesser mental health and physical health issues. Create opportunities to face challenges, develop autonomy, which means give the chance for the self to believe, yes, I can do it by myself. But to that, I need to learn, and learning comes by asking. Provide emotional coaching as well. and exposed to real role models, the next few generations of ours are surrounded by influencers on social media. Most of the influencers, sometimes I wonder, why does the word influencer even be used? A lot of them, when they reach out and they want to do work with us, one wonders, how would I talk to you? When I look at your feed, I feel embarrassed at times. So we need to expose children to the real role models. I was wondering the other day that when you ask children to write these essays in when middle and late primary, how come we ask children to write essays of people who were born before the 50s or 40s? What dearth in the last 60 plus years is there that we are not able to talk about role models who are younger? So, and the last module is well-being in the classroom. I have always believed a classroom is a microcosm representing the macro world because of the diversity, the heterogeneity that is there. So if each classroom has well-being, then the school has well-being, then the RWAs and city, so on and so forth. And that's how you create a culture of well-being. So the very famous PERMA theory by Martin Seligman is something that we need to look at. PERMA, positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning in life, accomplishing goals. School education for you. Children become positive, they become engaged to life, they have meaningful interaction with life, focus on relationship, accomplish their goals. That's what we want children to do. And I think that's what is the key here that needs to be understood. So what I talked about is the idea of a mental health curriculum. An idea where we talk about how a curriculum through conversations over the years can be spread across children. This curriculum is available. Macmillan has been a publisher for the curriculum. We do teacher training. So these are 5 modules. We'll train your teachers on each of these modules. The modules include what activities and how they impart at what age group, each of these modules by what techniques. Feel free, reach out. And like I had promised Gaurav and IPN, that for IPN, we'll be more than happy to extend this so that as many children as they can benefit, not just the mental health curriculum, some of the other things that I've talked about, media literacy, the anti-bullying work that we do, which is bully to buddy in today's time. It's very, very important. I think these are some of the things that we can pick up and work together. We'll be always very happy to support. You have also been saying this all this while, that 20-25 minutes is the attention span that is left because of the amount of digital interface that we do. So I typically just keep quiet after 20-25 minutes and then go for the question answers, because young logo ka to aur bula hai na, because what is happening with young kids? An Instagram story is what, 15 seconds, right?
Absolutely.
So the swipe to decide whether they're staying or not is about less than 1.5 seconds. So what we are doing here is we are actually destroying all the attention span that children have by the amount of digital interface that they have. So on that note, feel free to ask any questions, happy to answer.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And thank you for that curriculum bit. I'm sure a lot of schools will get benefited, Dr. Sameer. Thank you very much. I have the first question. Roshni Khatri, please give your brief introduction and which is your name, your city, and then you can ask your question.
Very good evening, sir, and to Dr. Sameer Parekh. This is Dr. Roshni Khatri from Billabong High International School, Bhopal, and I'm working in the school as a senior psychology faculty with grades 11th and 12th. I've been in touch with Dr. Sameer Parekh, and recently, sir, had also conducted a session on mental health, and many students from my school had participated and taken a lot more empowering feedbacks from sir. I would also like to bring it forth that sir had also sent a book that was written by Sameer sir on mental health, which I have read, and it has also empowered just not me with the book, but also my students. I'm so sorry, there is some disturbance coming from the background. Can I raise my question now?
Sure.
My question from Sameer sir is that though it's little, not connected with the topic that we have, but because we were talking about mental health, all I wanted to know from Sameer sir is, sir, when we talk about reaction and response, as an educator of psychology, I keep reinforcing and telling my students that, it's always good for us not to react, but should respond to a situation. But when it comes to spontaneous thought, as in when we are with a client and as a therapist, when we sit for any, let's say, psychoanalytic technique or letting go of the emotions with which the person has been going through since quite some time, will it still be okay to use the word reaction? That what is your reaction to the situation? Or is it okay to use the word response?
Roshni, we lost you.
Situation.
I have never given to the mere word match with the meaning of the person sitting opposite side as well, right? So if I use the word response for reaction and reaction for response, and you use the reverse, then it's a mismatch in any case. I think it's more about how you explain what that individual needs to do in that given situation. But my thought around this is we will continue to react and respond and do both. We just need to make sure that it is non-pathological and it is productive. At the end of the day, we are human beings and we will falter every now and then.
Thank you so much, sir. But sir, I don't know, as an individual, because we all are very curious to learn and know. I still, as an individual, feel that when I hear a reaction, I get different words in my mind as when opposed for response. When I hear response, it gives me more positive thoughts. I am more open to ideas. But when I listen to reaction, I at times I stop myself and then I feel whether I do I do need to react or actually respond.
So fair point. But like I said, a lot of times individual a perception, individual emotion, individual experience, individual thought and meaning also plays a part in the way things shape up. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. For the question bit, as requested, either you can put it on the chat. However, I usually avoid chats. So you can put a quick show of hand, then we can have a quick question. Dr. Sameer, and it can be ranging not just on this topic, but throughout the week, I believe, whatever topic we covered, if you feel that question of yours possibly wasn't answered. Dr. Geeta Venkat, please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, good evening, sir, and thank you for a wonderful session. And Mike, what I feel, regarding the students, few children are like that. The parents complain that they got a lot of, they get angry for everything. Like they are against their parents, against their friends, and all like that. So, are there any exercises for this to treat this mental health, like to be happy and to be balanced and to control yourself?
So not directly, which means it's not that if you do A, B, or C, suddenly your anger would go. We have to understand that in teen years, there'll be a couple of years where the body biological changes do have an impact. And that's where the environment also needs to give them a lot more of space. Sometimes we don't give adolescents the kind of space that they need, which makes them react a lot more with a lot of aggression that happens. Second aspect is that we also need to understand that if you balance and stimulate well, which is physical activity and sports, there is robust evidence that children with sports, regular sports, children with extracurricular activities, arts, creativity, music, children who develop another activity as an alternative to what they can spend their time to end up being less aggressive. Children who watch less aggressive programs, less video games will also be. But similarly, children who are from a home where aggression is not there, where they're exposed to an environment where aggression is not there, because aggression also has a learned aspect to it. So we need to put all of that together. The right approaches encourage children in physical activity and sports, encourage mindfulness activities, relaxation, music, extracurricular activities. They are going to be the differentiator between a kid who's going to grow up into an adult with resilience or not.
Okay, that means that their agony should be removed there somewhere while dancing and while singing or something like that. Okay, thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm picking up one question from the chat. Few students show lots of temper, very rigid to handle, most of the time keep silence. All these are signs of mental illness, question mark, and how to react with them.
Mental illness, we can't be sure. Concerns, yes, which means whether the kid is unhappy, hesitant, anxious, struggling, any of these things, yes, the child needs to be addressed. We need to spend time. We need to figure out how the child can feel more fruitful, more comfortable. That's what we need to do. And like I said, what shapes up life? We have relationships, at least one good friend, if not more, right? Good relationships at home, good relationships and atmosphere at home between others, physical activity and sports, creative interests, performance based on your aptitude, ability, effort and zeal to do well, sense of optimism and hope, and basically to be able to have fun, right? You put all of this together, and if any of this is missing, then you add that component to make it full. It's like a thali. So you need to add the achar also, even though it might not be your food, but without it, it will still be incomplete. So it's something like that. You need to have everything to be able to give the feeling of a fruitful and a complete life, actually.
Yeah. So, Rachita Khurana, you can now give me a moment. Rachita, you can now unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to put my query.
Most welcome.
Sir, actually, since we have started with this lockdown, we have one or the other webinar going on for teachers, and at times we are forced by our institutions that you have to attend so and so, so and so, and we also somewhere feel pressurized that yes, this is in the queue. Next, I have to attend this. Next, after this, I have to attend this. So at times that also creates a kind of mental stress. So I think same is with the children also. They are also like there is so much information floating around and so many things going around. They also feel that what to attend, what to attempt, what to leave. So if you can just guide me on this, I'll be very delighted.
Before Dr. Sameer answers this question, I want to ask you, I hope you are not forced to attend this certain session for
Not at all, not at all, not at all. But I am very happily attending all the sessions.
Fantastic.
Every day I'm attending the sessions.
Let me first clear the air so that we can.
No, not at all, not at all, sir, not at all. Thank you.
Now you can answer the question, please. Thank you.
My honest take on this is imagine a world where COVID would have happened, like the Spanish flu, where internet was not there. We would have not known what hit us, right? Internet, smartphones have been the one savior, whatever we say. In absence of that, we would have not known what to do. I understand that whatever school education right now is happening is far from what ideal is. Of course, everybody understands that. We can't be fooling our own selves by saying that, we are giving the same level of what we were doing in actual physical classes. It's not possible. Not that we were trained, not that kids were trained, not that teachers were trained. We've just adapted very fast because we realized that the situation was beyond us. That's one aspect. I still feel we are amongst the very, 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 very fortunate people. Probably not even in the top 1% percentile in the world who've been affected by the pandemic. That we can actually think about the fact that, we have the part luxury to actually say, okay, do I do this or do I do that? I very truly feel that. If I give you my own example, and I may not be always the best example because of being very, very pathological at most levels, especially when it comes to work. I think in the last 6 months, I've worked far more than what I've worked in the last few years, right? That's what I've realized, because I mean, today, absolute nightmare. I mean, World Mental Health Day, nightmare. I just cannot even tell you how the day has gone and has not stopped, frankly. It's a very, very long day. And if you are unfortunate enough to have an Instagram live, then I'm going to be live till 11 p.m., right? Although that's for kids to have some fun with all the psychology students for our quiz. But so all our work shifted digital. So I'm doing only online consults with my patients, but that helped all the patients because they couldn't come to me. I couldn't go to them. If I would have interrupted that care, so many people would have relapsed, right? So the whole day you are doing online consults, then you have all these web engagements. You need to continue to support both the health staff, the paramedical staff, the community at large. So there is so much happening, but I still feel that yes, I'm exhausted and I know that. But to be honest, I'd much rather be exhausted than having to spend a couple of hours not knowing what to do. I mean, very honestly, that's my take on this. So even if, and I tell this to children as well, even if your parents and teachers are forcing you to take a class, take it, yeah. And one extra class would be far better than staring at the wall and not knowing what to do.
Roshni, you have a follow-up question?
Yes, sir. I have just this one more question from Sameer, sir. I have a child and she has been going through a lot of turbulences ever since childhood. It's just not that is she facing now, but especially ever since this pandemic has begun, she very frequently talks about that I'm feeling very lonely and I just don't feel like, getting back to studies and doing my homework. When I make a weekly binding call, that's the strategy and a technique that we have started following at Billabong High because of this pandemic way, that every weekend we connect with the student and try to find out if there's any problem or any concern that keeping them stopping them from studying and focusing on what they have to do. So today she shared with me that, ma'am, in spite of trying too hard, I mean, I'm making sure that I sit and study, but somehow I'm not getting that intrinsically motivated. I mean, I'm not getting that motivation to sit and study. And being a board class, what tips, sir, would you like to give, like, should be incorporated so that she doesn't feel that she's lagging behind the students, which is also coming now onto her self-esteem and self-worth, which I could sense by the way she's interacting in the class and also while I'm talking to her. So that's all I wanted to know from you, sir.
Lots of things that come to my mind. I still believe board exam is just one of those days. I still believe board exam is the easiest exam that you take in your life. The mock exams are so much difficult. You guys, teachers and schools make mock exams so difficult that the board exam seems like a cakewalk. Yeah, I think we've overrated board. I'm happy that they are looking at a new education policy, which will bring some change. I think we resist change, but we need to go through a lot of changes. We also need to accept this is going to be a strange academic year, we like it or not. This academic year cannot be measured as our normal academic or common academic years. Lots of children will struggle to be able to find the kind of right motivation at times. It's not easy. Staying at home, staying indoors, staying in front of a computer. Every child may not have the luxury of having a computer or a laptop. For some it is phones, some it is network issues. It's a challenge. I think we just need children to be able to basically have a routine life and feel that life is still fine and are able to have reasonably good time. And academics is just a bonus right now. For me, academics is a bonus. Board year or not, academic is a bonus. And the year is not for individuals. It's going to be for everybody, right? It's not that in one city COVID has left, in the other city it's not like that. So I tell you, but since you were talking about the work that we did in COVID, two things. So every year we have this quiz. We call it Psyched. Psyched is a very interesting thing that we came up with. It's the 5th year. We were thinking of not having the quiz this year because the quiz essentially had a lot of physical rounds, and we got so many children who got after our life that we still want to do Psyched. We still want to do Psyched. So we said, okay, fine, we'll do one day an online round only. And every day on Instagram, we're asking this fun questions. And if you'll see at 11 p.m., you have children coming and getting live. Okay, ask me a question on this topic, ask me a question on that topic. You bring fun, they'll do it. So for all of you out there, if you have psychology students or not, anybody 9th, 10th onwards, ask them to register and have some fun. That's the key. When I did summer internship with school kids, we were just forced by children to do more and more and more. So we have planned a short internship. Then some children said we are interested in that. So okay, fine for some people, and then that became a whole thing. I mean, almost 20,000 children a day were attending these sessions, and an average 1 hour session had about 3,000 to 4,000 questions being asked. So it was quite unbelievable, very, very humbling in its own way. And what I feel that children are a lot more inquisitive than what we believe that they are. It's just that sometimes we tend to categorize them a bit too rigidly. If we give a bit of open space, then they'll be able to unfurl and blossom a lot.
Manisha, your question.
Yeah, thank you, Gaurav. Thank you so much for this session, and thank you, Doctor, for all your valuable inputs. What I would like to know is what we have realized in the last 6 months, that those cases which were improving, like in my school, we have some cases where we know that the child is suffering from schizophrenia or bipolar or any such things, but with the proper guidance and medication, they were doing well and adapted to the mainstream. But in the last, ever since the pandemic has hit us, and in the last 2-3 months especially, slowly the problems have increased and the cases have relapsed. How as educators and how as the parents, because sometimes the parents also approach our school counselors, so how as parents and educators can we help these children to come back to what they were doing properly before the pandemic hit, actually?
To be honest, a generic answer is a difficult one because we are looking at clinical issues. And yes, it's a fact that whether it is an ongoing medical issue, which is the mental health issue, or a physical health issue, from diabetic patients to dialysis patients to mental ill patients, people who have been stabilized have gone through a very different kind of stress, which in some people may have caused exaggeration of their symptoms or reappearance of symptoms or triggering of certain more symptoms, and it has been a challenge. And I think the role of parents and teachers is to be compliant with the treating medical team and be in regular touch with the team. So if whether it's the dosages or counseling or therapy, whatever needs to be upped or changed or upgraded for a short span to bring things back to a stable level would take time, but we also need to give ourselves space. These are very, very, very unprecedented times, and we are not even remotely out of it. So it's just that it's now a parallel track, and my concern is that yes, there should be a parallel track. Yes, we need to figure a way to get life back on track. But my concern is that we can't stop being careful. I feel so irritated when I see a person without a mask. I just can't deal with it. I cannot understand that how is this even possible? And it just reflects on the fact that at a societal level, in spite of all possible messaging that comes from government levels, from ministry levels, from everybody, we've just continued to flaunt. And yesterday I was asked this question, so I answered that, and I say that here as well. The government can't come and put a mask on your face. That's not the government's job. You put your own mask and then you put in your effort. I mean, that's the only way to work. They can only tell you what's good for you, but if you don't do it, you don't do it. And that's what education is. And I strongly believe that all your interactions that teachers have with children, reinforcing prevention during COVID times, needs to be consistently talked to day after day, so that children do not feel that because the restaurant is open, let me go with my friends and have a party out there. That cannot happen. Yeah, so when my young colleagues tell me that, we'd like to go out because now everything's open, I say, yeah, one condition, you'll wear a mask while eating if you're sitting next to me. Otherwise, I'm not sitting next to you. And you will have to keep at least a couple of meters away from me. If you can manage it, it's fine. But without a mask, I won't let you eat in front of me.
Ghanshyam, your question?
Yeah, no, thank you
Yes,
so
sir.
much.
Yes. Thank you very much, Gaurav sir. You gave me this opportunity. And first of all, I want to share with you. We are connected from last 2.5 years. And this was IPN was my first group. Join as an educator groups. I found it on LinkedIn. So we are connected on LinkedIn from so many years ago. And such a very nice session is going on, and I got from last 4 days. Actually, first day I forgot, and last day it was my session somewhere. That's why I could not join. And it's very nice. And I want to ask one question with Dr. Samir sir. Sir, suppose in a class, and while a teacher is teaching, some of the students, they are properly interact with teachers and blackboard. Some of the students, they are in the class, but their mind is somewhere. Some of students in the class, they are acting to interact with the teachers and blackboard. Some of the students, they are talking with each other, and some of the students are doing some other activities. So how can we collect them together? As an educationist, this is my question to you. How can we collect them together in the class proper interaction? Thank you.
So I think it's not possible to connect with 100% audience. The audience may be 10 people or the audience may be 100 people. I don't think it's ever going to be a possibility. I think our ability to connect to about 70 to 80% of people is good enough. And those whom we cannot connect in the conventional format, we need to find a specific format for their individual self. That's the only way to do it. So, when you would have teachers who will take a class and then realize that, these 3 kids were not able to pay attention, then you find time to talk to them one-on-one separately and then get them back aligned. There is no other way to do this. But the reality of our lives is that most teachers don't have the luxury of this time, that they would not have a period free after every period, that if at all they needed to give some extra attention, they could have given. And these are practical aspects of our life, and we need to accept it, especially in a country like ours where the population is the way it is. I mean, we have schools which may have a 1:20 ratio, but we also have schools which have a 1:100 plus ratio, right? So it's I don't think that the utopian would work. I mean, we need to do what is best. We need to be able to take care of the 70 to 80% in the generic format, and then use our time to identify those who were not able to fit in and give them special, different kind of attention. But for that, we need institutions to support us.
Dr. Shashikala, would you like to ask your question verbally? You can unmute yourself, otherwise I can read that question for you. The question is, convincing a parent to take help from a counselor is a challenging task, as there are acceptance issues and parents are in denial mode. How do we handle such parents?
I don't think you should convince a parent to go to a counselor. I think that entire approach makes a parent feel very, very uncomfortable. I think the right approach is to educate a parent about what you've observed. Ask the parent to try and have the same, try and see if they also observe the same. Encourage them to find out more literature, give them literature, and then give them time. Give them the option if they want to talk to the counselor or somewhere else or their own pediatrician, they should just talk, so that if you've noticed something, if they have also noticed, then you can try and figure that out. The reason why parents are worried is because they sometimes feel that when you send to a counselor in the school, they sometimes feel that, a kind of labeling of sorts, or the worry of stigma and things like that. So the right approach is you first let them be aware and educated about what is happening so that they take the decision. And even if that takes a few weeks, it's okay.
Mhm. Okay. Any other question? Otherwise, I will, on behalf of all of us, will say a quick thank you to Dr. Sameer, and then because I'm sure he has a marathon engagements. Yeah, absolutely. So I will like to give you, in fact, 7 minutes sort of a breather from our side, I will say. But I think there's a question coming up, so I'll just take one or more, 2 questions maximum, and then we'll say thank you to you. Ms. Soma, if you can unmute yourself and ask the question. Yeah, please go ahead. Ms. Soma, you have been unmuted. How are you not audible to us? So why don't you put your question on the chat window so that we will ask that question in the mean. Yeah, now you're audible. Please go ahead.
Okay, sir, good evening and thank you for this program. But good evening, sir. First of all, I want to tell you that I come from a place called Northeast and I'm from Shillong. So I find many of the teachers being in touch with you. So I would love to get an insight as to how to get in touch with you, number one. Number two, sir, I have a very difficult query in me that mental health is an important aspect. But should we enlighten the children or the parents about this mental health or deal it without mentioning that term at all to them, taking it as naturally that these are a part of the growing, and then we handle it? Because whenever we mention this word or the care we need to do or send her to a counselor or something like that, it becomes a sort of a major problem. So if it is known to us and not mentioned to them and handled, and whether it is pandemic or non-pandemic, we always have these kind of issues. Is it right or wrong? Thank you, sir.
No, so different aspects to this. When you talk to a parent, you talk about what specific behavior or concern you've noticed, help them read, take knowledge, and figure out what goals you have collectively for the child. That's one thing. But having conversations on mental health, mental wellness, mental well-being, mental illness, conversations without labeling individuals, they should be happening at school level also. Because we just can't not use the word and then suddenly that word is used in a random, inappropriate way. And children are exposed to so much social narrative that we can't escape the words. So both things. Specifically, you do not use labels. Generically, in a conversation, you use the word mental health. I mean, it's a World Mental Health Day today.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So Dr. Sameer, thank you very much. I will really not hold you back further. In fact, on behalf of the entire IPN fraternity, thank you for all 6 days, I would say. These were wonderful. At least I can talk on behalf of the IPN fraternity and for my own self. It was wonderful learning experience. We really were very well articulated session. In fact, topic were wonderful. Thank you very much. And secondly, I will, in fact, obviously, I'm getting a lot of these queries on the chat as well. And more than that, there are a lot of thank yous for you, which is that how can we get the curriculum, which I'm sure you can help me out with so that I can pass on to the entire fraternity for that matter. My sincere thanks once again. Have a great evening. You are a wonderful individual and hope to keep in touch with you and we keep working on this. Thank you very much, sir. Take care. Take care, everyone. And thank you, everyone. And as Dr. Sameer pointed out, please do wear your mask, stay safe and stay healthy. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.